warm welcome to the SRO eSport GT Series here at an absolutely wonderful Nürburgring in Germany. My name's Paul Jeffrey, alongside me is Mr. Chris Hay. And Chris, weekend so far, how are you finding things?
Nürburgring is a world-class venue. It's fantastic to be here. And of course, Sim Racing Expo is on at the same time. So there are thousands of sim racers on site. It's been great talking to a huge variety of different people throughout the community and just feeling like our little niche hobby is going from strength to strength, Paul.
I would absolutely agree with that one. And regards the SRO eSport Series, this is the fourth and final round of the qualification portion of the championship. Are you looking forward to seeing what our esporters are going to get up to on the laser scan version of the Nürburgring?
Yeah, there's a really strong list of drivers in this particular heat, so I think the pace at the front is going to be hot and the competition is going to be fierce throughout the field.
Yep, and as I say, it's a beautiful day here at Nürburgring. The track's looking great, the expo looks wonderful, our drivers are ready, and I'm looking forward to coming along on this journey with you guys as the weekend progresses. And here we are in the eSport Game Park, right in the heart of the pit lane at Nürburgring. Chris, we've been lucky to see some fantastic venues during the course of this season. How does this one stack up to what we've seen so far?
Well, as you can see, we share a wall, if you can call it that, with the Kessel Racing Ferrari team. The other side of us, we've got our Motorsport Aston Martin. We are very much in the heart of the pit lane. At Monza, we were at the pit exit, at one of the most historic venues in Grand Prix racing. At Paul Ricard, we were in the centre of the paddock in just a beautiful location. At Spa, we were on top of the F1 pit lane, overlooking Eau Rouge and the bus stop chicane. And it's just so difficult to pick a favourite, Paul.
It is. We're really very fortunate with this series to visit some wonderful places. And you can feel, you can sense the atmosphere at the racetrack, being really in the heart of where the action is happening. Our drivers are all doing their practicing now, so everybody's gearing up for a big day of racing. But to bring real and virtual motorsport so closely together, to coexist like they do here in the pit lane, side by side, it's a really exciting avenue for us to be going down, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's something I really want to try and get across in these broadcasts, is just how really very cool it is to be here immersed in all of this.
Yep, and it's actually very hot rather than cool at the moment, so we're going to go ahead and have a really good weekend of racing. I hope you stay with us throughout the broadcast, and I'm looking forward, Chris and I, to bringing you the fourth round of the SRO eSport GT Series here at a beautiful and sunny Nürburgring.
Hey, I'm Kamil Pawłowski and I come from Poland and I'm racing for Trustmaster Esports.
Hello, I'm Maximilien Vedi, I'm 29 from France and I'm driving for Virtual Driver by TX3.
My name is André Franke, I'm from Germany and I'm 27 years old.
Hello guys, I'm Sami Ibrahimi, I'm from Berlin and I drive for Redline Motorsports and I hope for a good race.
Hello, I'm Nikodem Wiśniewski. I'm from Poland, 24 years old, and I'm presenting Williams Esports.
Hi, my name is Haniel Sabti. I'm 31 years old, from the Netherlands, and I race for Trustmaster.
Hello, my name is Agnes Schoonvliet. I'm 24 years old, and I'm from Belgium.
Hi, I'm Kamil Franczak. I'm 29 and coming from Poland, and I drive for Trustmaster Esports.
Hi, I'm Luca Dozzado. I'm 19 years old and come from Italy.
Hi, my name is David Greco, 33 years old from Italy, and I drive for Trustmaster Esports.
Hi, my name is Giuseppe De Fuoco. I come from Italy. I am 34 years old and I drive for Musto GD Sport.
Right, we've got a few seconds left to go until the formation lap restarts for the second time. So again, Pawłowski leads the cars away from the grid, gets a lightning start.
He's gone, hasn't he?
He has indeed. Trying to set a mark.
There's your standing start, Paul. You're happy now?
Yeah, I've had both, all good stuff. So we talked about this before, we talked about it yesterday's broadcast as well, but at the beginning of the season we ran the final corner formation lap Now we're doing the full formation lap, so the drivers will have to condition their cars ready for a charge down into T1, which is quite a big braking event into turn 1 and then the little switchback section into 2, 3, 4 and 5. So there's a lot going on right at the very beginning of the race.
It is, and we've seen a lot of action, not so much at turn 1. Turn 1's been pretty clean, drivers are aware of it, but it's the Mercedes arena area, turn 2, 3 and 4, where we've had a little bit of argy-bargy.
We've had certainly plenty of drivers competing for the same bit of tarmac, and that's the nature of the circuit. It's a really nice part of the track where you can do, where you can position your car in such a way to challenge your rival. And again, start first lap. That's naturally where the cars are most closely compacted. So expect fireworks in lap 1 once again.
Yeah, for sure, Paul. Trying desperately not to say absolutely there.
It's so hard, isn't it?
It's
now we know
difficult
about it. We spoke about this off air, Chris and I. Neither of us use absolutely in normal everyday language, but on the stream all the time. So, right, we are getting around the warm-up lap now. A few cars, as you say, quite aggressively warming their tyres. It's going to be... There's a lot of people on this grid that are wanting to make inroads into the running order very, very early into the race, which... could be interesting for us watching back at home.
Well, it certainly was yesterday. There were some very optimistic lap 1 moves amongst the pros, silvers and AMs. So it's not necessarily just the experience of the driver that's playing its part there, but perhaps the attitude.
And this is a great track where overtaking really is possible at several points. We've found...
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out in the drive, because yesterday, with the cars, the ebb and the flow, we had overtaking happening at every conceivable point, sometimes in the gravel trap. That seemed to work quite well for a couple of them. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how closely the cars can follow in the dry and whether it just drops back to those sort of 2 traditional braking points into turn 1 and into the NGK chicane turn 14 towards the end of the lap.
We've seen a couple of, the slipstream is quite effective here. There's a couple of long straights that may have an impact on the opportunities to do overtaking manoeuvres on your rivals. The Lamborghini, I think, was really good on corner exit and in a straight
was certainly
line.
in the wet. It's just interesting to watch Kamil Pawlowski there. We got a little bit of the on-screen HUD, which we don't see very often, but you can see him dragging the brake of that Audi just to generate a bit of brake temperature, which obviously translates into tyre temperature as well. He was revving and hitting the traction control limiter a lot, spinning up the rear tyres, conditioning the car ready for the start as the drivers start to file up, getting ready just one final corner. In fact, leaving it a bit late behind for Kamil Franczek to get alongside for the start. This Kamil Pawlowski is in the pound seats here.
Yep, Kamil Pawlowski trying to build himself an early advantage before the green flag even waves in what is the final round of the SRO Esport GT Series here at Nürburgring. Our cars, drivers are all looking up to the starting gantry, waiting for that green light to begin the final race of the weekend here at the Nürburgring. A great start from Kamil Pawlowski. Franczek very, very late on the brakes, looking at the outside of the line in the Lexus. Doesn't quite have enough overlap and slips back behind the current race leader, although Pawlowski running wide in the Audi, opening the door for Franczek.
Franczek has the inside line into turn 3, and we've traditionally seen quite a lot of overtakes here, but you're on the wrong side of the track for turn 4 and then the run down to the Valvoline curve, turn 5.
Franczek there, very clever driving, decided that the opportunity wasn't just there for him yet, but gets in the slipstream of the big Audi. He's got the Mercedes of Hani Al-Sapti behind him now. Franczek running a little bit wide, shows the door to Al-Sapti. Al-Sapti decides against it, drops back in and maintains his P3, closely followed by Nikola Vernesky in the Lamborghini, and De Fuoco very, very close on his tail in the second of the 2 Lexus at the front of the field.
Yeah, Franczek looking really good through the first couple of corners, but very quickly came under pressure after being wrong-footed after that early overtaking attempt, Paul.
Yeah, Franczek half a second behind now at the moment, just regathered himself. Good driving, Chris, though, between those two. I was quite impressed that they didn't push the matter so early in the race. We've got 45 minutes ahead of us, so there is still ample time to carve your way through the field, and it's Pawlowski that maintains the race lead heading into the final sector of the opening lap of the race. Franczek P2, just a fraction of a second behind. Al-Sapti in the yellow Mercedes in third, Vernesky in fourth, Fuoco, who we're looking at now in the second Lexus, currently 5th, and Arne Schuveli keeping a watching brief in the Mercedes behind in 6th.
It's looking very dangerously like we've had an entirely clean lap 1, which certainly was not the case in any of the races yesterday.
No, it's amazing what taking the rain out of the equation has done for the sanity of the drivers. But again, another new follower, thank you very much for that one. As we look at Frenchak, looking up the inside, thinking better of it, not quite close enough to pull off the overtake, but again, he's still only a fraction of a second behind Podlaski. So Kemal thinking about what the next options are, the next good passing opportunity. It's going to be a challenging race for these two, I think, both lightning fast drivers.
Yeah, the pacing qualifying was almost identical between the two of them. The cars quite different. The front engine Lexus, see how that goes throughout the race. The Audi perhaps being a little twitchier as a mid-engine car, rotates well into corners. Will be interesting to see how the tyres last throughout the stint, and with one of the real pace setters in this series right behind him.
And we're riding on board now in the Emerald Frey Lexus, the second of the 2 Lexus cars. This is De Fuoco, currently in 5th position, looking very hungry to get onto the back of that Lamborghini ahead and see if he can put Wisniewski under pressure for what is 4th, but when you discount Frenchak's position, the final place in the qualifying seat for the Barcelona final. So a lot of pressure, a lot riding on this particular battle on the circuit at the moment.
It's a beautiful illustration of the way the different cars behave through the Dunlop hairpin there, with the Lexus very much taking a tight line, pulling the front end in, having to deal with the heavy engine at the front, and the Lamborghini taking more almost a V-shaped line through it and getting on the power early and blasting up towards the Schumacher S.
Yeah, the Lamborghini, as we said before in the broadcast, is a fast but difficult car to control. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds as we drop back to Samir Ibrahimi in the Kessel Racing Ferrari, currently in P10, not having a fantastic qualification session just before we came into the race, but he's got quite a lot of attention around him on track at the moment. So as we run back now to the race leaders again, that T1, Franchek having a look up the inside, but not got enough to commit himself fully on the brakes to get past the Audi in front.
Yeah, he's playing the mental game at the moment, Paul. He's been lapping within half a second the first couple of laps of the race. There's been barely more than a car length or two. The overtake wasn't on last lap, and it didn't look like it was on this lap, but it's worth showing them in your mirrors, isn't it?
And there's an interesting psychological thing in play here as well, Chris. Pawlowski in front will know that Franchak's already qualified for the final, so although it's a race for honour and it's a race for the race victory, he'll also be thinking a little bit, is there much point fighting this Lexus behind when it's getting the qualification seat for the final race that really matters? But you tell a racing driver to that, they'll see a fight and they'll defend for all they're worth.
Particularly when it's for a race win. I mean, giving up a race win for a qualifying position is it's sort of the Prost school of driving, and we'll see how that unfolds.
We will indeed, but at the moment Camel does have a lot of pace in this Lexus, really putting the Audi under pressure in
it's
front.
An accident in the background there, Paul. It looked like it may have been Wisniewski in the Lamborghini. I can't tell yet, the timing screen hasn't updated. Maybe we can go back to that on the stream.
So there's been an accident a little bit further down the field. It will be a shame for Wisniewski if it is, because he was running in P4 really quite high up the grid, and I think you may be right, Chris, because De Fuoco now is in P4, so he's moved up a position, and we're just seeing on the timing screen now Wisniewski dropping down the running orders, currently in P12. So a terrible shame for Nicodem. Not quite sure what happened there. We didn't quite catch it at the time, as now Franchak's really in the slipstream of the Audi in front. He's going to lead the move late. The Audi's he's telegraphing this one very early up the inside. Good on the brakes is both driver and car, but the gap is closing. Oh, millimetres to spare.
Well, I think that answers your question, Paul. I think Pawlowski was not willing to leave any more than exactly one car width at the apex there. That's fighting hard.
Yeah, this is real fighting hard. This is good close racing from both drivers, and now it's bringing Al Sapti back into the fight again as well in the yellow Mercedes. These two drivers squabbling for position is allowing Hani Al Sapti to close the gap on the race leaders and make this very soon to become a three-way fight.
Yeah, just to go back to the Wisniewski incident, it looked like he lost the car on the run out of the Schumacher S's turn 9 and 10. We've seen that the Lamborghini can be very twitchy. It's got some snap oversteer, particularly on the curbs. And without being able to see properly, it's hard to tell, but that would be my estimate of what probably happened there, Paul.
We've seen it times many, that Lamborghini, catching drivers out when they least expect it. A fast but slightly leery car in this series, as we're continuing to watch this fight for the race lead. The two camels, Pavlovsky and Kemchek, absolutely nose to tail.
Absolutely, Paul.
Absolutely twice, just to make sure we got that clear. Nose to tail, fighting for every square inch of tarmac on this virtual laser scan Nürburgring circuit. While that's happening, we're flicking back to David Greco, currently P7. So Greco, big improvement from a slightly unexpectedly low qualifying position.
Yeah, he had a bit of a bad time in Monza, which was the last time we saw him compete as well. Member of the Team Thrustmaster team, along with Franchek and Al Sabti. So looking positive for those guys today.
It is. Greco doing a very solid job. He sees a couple of cars. Verde and Schoenfly are sat in front of him, and also actually still in the same shot is De Fuoco. So Greco still very much in the mix. Is really late on the brakes, and the Lexus closes up to the back of Verde's Mercedes in front. That's fantastic stopping capability for Greco in that corner.
Yeah, it does look very good on the brakes, as we saw Franchek demonstrating the lap before. But look at the closing speed into turn 3 there, Paul. I'm going to say absolutely now, but a perfect demonstration of your point.
Yeah, really good on the brake is that Lexus, which bodes well for Greco. Most of the good, safe overtaking opportunities here at the Nürburgring are under the deceleration zone. So Greco in a good position. He looks very combative in his driving. It really seems like he's giving that car all that it's worth. So Greco hungry to move himself up the grid and maybe snag a surprise qualification for the next round.
Yeah, once again, just watching the differences in the way these cars behave through the corners. Greco seeming to favour quite a late turn in a lot of the times, other cars wanting to get the nose in early.
And that's what's really enjoyable, seeing a much more diverse grid of cars than we've seen previously. It really does go to show the different variety that the current GT3 regulations allow within the sport. And of course, this is the official game of the Blancpain GT series, so it's good to see a more realistic representation of the real world category.
Well, the other aspect, of course, about the Lexus is that it doesn't recognise that curbs exist and can just drive straight through them, much like the real car.
Yeah, which is very beneficial on a circuit such as this, as we continue to watch Greco charging through the field. Last time round was his personal fastest lap in a 1 minute 54.675. So let's see if he's managed to improve again. He's got the benefit of the tow, as Verde in front now, starting to look a little bit interested in the back of the blue Schoenfly driven mercedes-amg ahead.
Once again at the front of the field, focusing on Kamil Franchek. It feels like we've done a lot of this weekend, as we said, Paul. But we should shout out to Kamil Pavlovsky. He's doing an excellent job keeping an incredibly fast driver behind him in what is a car that we haven't seen a lot from this year.
It's not. Yeah, Pavlovsky doing, like I say, a really strong job under immense pressure from the car behind.
Greco is so fast through that Mercedes arena section, Paul. He seemed to lose out a bit towards the end of the lap through the faster stuff, but through those tight technical corners, that Lexus looks fantastic, and particularly, as he said earlier, on the brakes.
Yep, it's looking a really strong car. It's looking a really composed drive as well from Greco today, and it must be quite exciting for him as a driver. There's 35 minutes left on the clock, just under, and he can see both cars in front of him within catching and passing distance. So this is going to be a race as Verde runs a little bit wide, gets a little bit late on the throttle through the hairpin, gets Greco even more interested than he already was, trying to buy into this piece of tarmac that Verde is currently occupying, but he's got an air of inevitability about this. We're going to be getting in the next couple of laps in a position where Greco can really seriously think about utilising the potentially superior braking capabilities that he's got at this moment in time.
Yeah, the tough ask for him, Paul, is just staying close enough through that turn 11 and 12 where the Mercedes does look good. We're looking back from Arne Schoenfly at what looks like an overtaking attempt behind.
Greco on the outside into the chicane. That's a dangerous place to be. Thinks better of it. Manages to keep the car nicely gathered together and back onto the circuit. But ultimately, that's probably lost him a couple of car lengths over the Mercedes in front of him. But Greco still enjoying enough of a buffer to Franca behind in the Ferrari that he can afford a couple of those, but not too many, before he starts putting himself under pressure from behind and concentrating on mirrors rather than what's happening ahead of him on the circuit.
Yeah, Verdi saw that coming from a long way back and just positioned the car perfectly on the run down the inside. It's almost impossible to overtake around the outside there unless you just have a massive speed overlap and get the job done, or almost before the braking zone.
Just look here, Chris, how quickly Greco's managed to get himself back on the rear of that Mercedes, heading into the Coca-Cola turn. These were probably 5-6 car lengths behind, but going through the first sector of the lap, Greco again back into a thinking about overtaking position. So there's a load of inherent pace in that Lexus in the hands of David Greco at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Maximilian Verdi is starting to become a bit of a cork in the bottle of this fight. Now all the way down to 9th with Ibrahimi just all within the same camera frame there in 9th.
Yeah, and that makes for good news for us. We're happy about that. We like close racing here in this event, so if that can carry on for a little bit longer, just enough time to get Ibrahimi and Franca into the fight proper, we've potentially got a 4, 5, maybe even 6 car battle for what basically will it end up being the final round qualifying position. So a lot of pressure, a lot of racing still to go as we almost come to the first 15 minutes complete of this event.
Yeah, as you confidently predicted earlier, once again the battle really is in the mid-pack. That's not to dismiss the fight up front, which the two Camels just half a second, 2/10 of a second between them as you watch the Lexus just monstering the curbs through the NGK chicane. You're not going to be able to really try and move down into the Coca-Cola curve, but Kamil Franček hasn't had a better opportunity yet, I do not think, Paul.
Yeah, Franček really on a charge now in the Lexus as we cut back to them. They were separated by mere millimetres, and Franček now got a little bit of slipstream again, does it nice, telegraphs the move nice and early, shows his nose coming into the braking zone. Franček's really giving the impression of somebody that wants to get past, but wants to do it in the fairest and cleanest way possible, giving the car in front plenty of notice that this is where I am, this is where my strengths are, and this is what I intend to do at some stage in the next 31 minutes. So, as we've seen always from Kamil Franček, intelligent racing.
Yeah, well, as we pointed out earlier, he's already qualified, he doesn't need to risk anything, and reputationally, taking out one of the non-qualifying drivers might not go over all that well.
No, that's a really, really fair point, and both drivers currently showing supreme skill and very, very high levels of pace at the top 2 positions, so much so that they've now dropped Hani Al-Sabti by just over a second. So Al-Sabti in P3, but 1.1 away from Pavlovsky, who's leading. And Al-Sabti himself has got a 1.8 second gap over the Lexus of De Fuoco behind, so they're starting to gap each other a little bit now at the front of the field, with the exception of the top 2 drivers.
Yeah, the race has settled down, there's a rhythm going on, particularly at the front. Nobody needs to make moves early, show their hand. There is fuel saving going on at times as well, and with the longer races, tyres do come into play a little bit, certainly on some of the cars more than others. So there's no point necessarily in just running on the gearbox of the guy in front, but you tell that to David Greco.
That's right, and you made a really good point actually. Greco, I'll interrupt myself for a moment as Greco again has a look up the chicane, but finds himself running out of space and getting 2 wheels on the grass, so a little bit of spare trousers required moment there for David Greco as he lays it all on the line and manages to keep going, lives to fight another day, hasn't lost too much time, and will be regrouping himself once again for another attack at the back of the Mercedes-AMG in front.
Yeah, it looks like there's some frustration creeping in there. He knows he's got a much faster car than Verdi and probably Schoenfliet in front of him, and well, 5th place with Franček where it is still isn't going to be enough.
It's not, and we're riding back on board actually as we speak with the Lexus of Kamil Franček, who's currently 2nd, but again showing all signs that he's keen to get motoring on and overtake Pavlovsky in front. But credit where credit's due to Kamil Pavlovsky in the Audi, from what I've seen, not put a foot wrong and still maintaining a very high pace considering the circumstances in which he finds himself in this early part of the race.
Yeah, the 2 Thrustmaster drivers in the Lexus is providing much of the drama at the moment. Greco still nose to tail with Verdi. You can just see how well he got the drive off the corner now. Can he make a move around the outside of the Dunlop hairpin?
Yep, Greco in the best position he's been in so far in his fight against Verde, using the outside line, not knowing the place to be. You can see a lot of marbles on the outside of the track, and again, losing a little bit of grip. He's conscious that he's not going to be run wide off of the racetrack as Verde picks his racing line. Greco dropping back again, but he's got another really good run through the chicane. His track position's not
around
where
the
it
outside
needs
of
to
turn
be.
11 is going to be a tough ask, but he's managed to keep it in there and may have the inside line for turn 12. That again, does Verdi turn in? Does he leave him space? He does just enough, but this is going to be a very close run down to the NGK chicane.
Great driving by both drivers there. Both knew exactly where each other were on the racetrack and gave themselves just enough space, but not enough to allow an overtake. Greco now got the inside of the chicane, a little bit, not quite a big enough braking zone there, getting the car crossed up and over the gravel on the exit. Greco now under some severe pressure from Franke in the Ferrari behind, running a little bit wide. Frank is showing his nose up the inside. It's a case of who can get the power down faster. Greco's got mucky tyres and he's going to be overtaken as well by Ibrahimi in the Ferrari if he's not too careful. This is a danger zone now for Greco. Mucky tyres, under pressure. Can he maintain it into T1, Chris?
Yeah, well, it looks like he may even be able to run around the outside of Franke here. We've seen how well the Lexus stops. How well does it drive out of that? He's got the inside line for turn 2, which is the place to be, leaving enough room. He'll have the inside line again for turn 3, but it looks like he's made the place, Paul.
Yep, that's some superb driving from all concerned there. Greco managed to keep his head in a very difficult condition. We can hear some oohs and ahs from the crowd as they're watching on board with Ibrahimi now in the second of the two Ferraris. That could have been disastrous for Greco, but a fantastic recovery drive from a difficult position he found himself in, all because of the overtaking manoeuvre gone wrong at the chicane, the end of the lap.
Very much kept his head there after really a small mistake. Could have cost him 2 places, managed to get one of them back, and now is charging back towards Maximilian Verdi.
Yep, David Greco, an experienced sim racer, been around this sport for quite a while now and really showed all that experience and maturity during that moment of exciting track action there. So credit where credit's due to all drivers, some very respectful, clean and professional driving we've seen on track. I like to see things like that, Chris. It was a good fight, but it was a fair fight.
Yeah, very much so. Just an update on what's going on at the front. Kamil Franček now probably about the furthest he's been behind all race, full 0.7 of a second off of the lead.
Yep, so the front remains status quo. Alsapt is closed down a little bit. Alsabat is closed down a little bit as well. He's just 1 second away. As Samuel Ratz looking to overtake on grass and gravel as he throws the Ferrari into the inside position. The gap is a little love tap between Ratz and the Lamborghini of Tizzato, I think it was, in front. But all's fair that ends well, and Ratz takes the position to move himself up into P10.
Yeah, decided to use all the track and more through turn 13. Didn't seem to harm his exit, and now under pressure from the 2 Lamborghinis, though, Samuel Ratz.
This is an expensive amount of cars occupying the same piece of racetrack. Can the Lamborghini get around the outside? Catches the front end of Samuel Ratz and spins him round. A little bit of contact from the passing car, and that's an end to that fight as Samuel Ratz will look to bring the car back onto the circuit and carry on his way.
Ratz took a huge amount of curb through there. The floor of the car so easy to ground out and end up with no wheels in contact with the ground, and just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, a very unfortunate set of circumstances which draws to a close that particular fight, which is unfortunate for all concerned, but as you say, the car unsettled, a little bit of contact, and inevitably it was going to be going round, unfortunately. As we now look back to the front of the field where, as you say, the gap has gone out to a mammoth half a second between our first and second place drivers, and back in the Maximilian Verde, David Greco ongoing fight. Greco was actually done a really good job to gap the 2 Ferraris behind, which, if we remember correctly, it was only fighting with 1 lap ago.
Yeah, in about 2/3 of a lap, Paul, he's pulled in a second or so, Maximilian Verdi. He's just got so much more pace in that car, but Verdi has been defending excellently, and it's going to be tough to get past.
It's going to be really tough to get past. The Mercedes is nippy in a straight line. It's fairly handy in the corners as well, and this is going to be a real monumental effort from David Greco to unlock that pace that he has in the car and secure an overtake, as we just see Tizzato get overtaken at a very unlikely point in the racetrack by the fellow Lamborghini of Nikitin Wisniewski.
He must have got a pretty bad drag off of turn 12, the Warsteiner curve. That's the only reason I can think of for an overtake happening that early in the straight.
And Wisniewski as well, obviously recovering from a troubled start to his race. There's a lot of pace in Nicodem's car as Greco looking up the inside, a really last of the late breakers, Daniel Ricciardo-esque move, struggles to get the car slowed down, runs wide, and good driving from Verde, saw that one come in, released the brake, got the car turned in and nipped back up the inside. Thank you very much. Let's try that one again on the following lap.
Yeah, David Greco had to try something though. He's losing so much time here. As you said, in free air, I'm sure David Greco is a good second faster than Verdi in the AMG at the moment. So the overtaking moves getting less conventional.
Less conventional, but as you say, he needs to try something out of the ordinary to make this pass now, because he'll be very conscious that he can see Schumpeter's Mercedes ahead getting further and further away, and drivers at this level making that time of lap time gap up in just the 22 minutes that remain is a big ask for any driver. So Greco is seeing his opportunity to slip in from his hands, really needs to effect an overtake in the next lap or two if he wants to stand a realistic chance of closing the gap up to the pound seats at the front of the field.
Well, yeah, as we said earlier, Paul, and to answer a question, a hypothetical that you posed, where are we going to see the overtaking moves happen? And it is those traditional braking zones into turn 1 and the NGK chicane.
Yeah, it does, and especially with Greco's car, seems to be particularly potent on the brake at the moment, which one would have thought gave him the advantage, but he's not quite got enough horses to get all the way up on the back of the Mercedes at the important parts. I think this one's going to go on and on. But speaking of getting up on the back of other cars, Kamal Franchek now in the Lexus, really, again, looking, staying in the slipstream to the last possible moment of Pawlowski in front, looking at the inside, showing the nose, showing what he wants to do, late on the brakes. Pawlowski keeps his racing line, doesn't give Franchek any opportunity to go through open doors, and those two are getting as close as they possibly can as we flick back to Verde. Verde under pressure from Greco. Greco gives him a little love kiss, manages to slow the car down much better this time. Defends the inside line. Verde hard on the power, trying to get the cut back. Good driving from both. Greco giving absolutely no space, no Mercedes-sized space, and hooray, he's done it.
Finally gets the move done. That overtake has been forming for the last, well, 20 minutes or so, Paul. He's tried 3 or 4 times, he's tried different places of the track, and finally managed to get a good enough run off of turn 17 to just take advantage of the slipstream and just do the nice traditional safe overtake on the brakes into turn 1.
And I want to give a shout out to both drivers for that and the racing that they've displayed between them up to this point. Both very clearly knew where each other were on the circuit, gave each other respect and room, but was hard as well. So fantastic sim racing and esport driving from these two. A real pleasure to watch, and now David Greco's got the difficult challenge of getting his head down and closing that gap to Arne Schumpeter in front.
Speaking of difficult challenges, we're looking at the fight for the lead again with Kamal Franchek, again within a few tenths of a second of Pawlowski, running into the final part of the lap where we've seen the Lexus get close, but just not quite close enough.
Yeah, Franchek is really... is he biding his time? Is it the ultimate limit of his pace? Or is he just trying to find a safe and secure way to get past, conscious that he's not in the fight for trying to secure a slot in the final? A really curious scenario to be in, actually. And I dare say if Franchek was more, had a higher appetite for risk, could make the move, but he's trying very hard not to negatively impact the races. Once again, he shows his inside up into T1, but Pawlowski's not falling for that trick.
Yeah, he got a little bit of unexpected understeer through the middle of turn 17, and that compromised his run out onto the straight. I think it's fair to say that if this is going to happen, he's going to have to be inch perfect.
Yep, Ibrahimi now we're looking at in the Ferrari fight for 8th and 9th position. Ibrahimi been trying to find a way past the red Ferrari of Franca for quite a few laps now, and these guys seem to be stalemating a little bit. Same car, of course, slightly different setups, slightly different driving styles, but that's probably the worst scenario possible as a driver when you come up against the same mark as yours. They're strong in all the same places and weak in all the same places. A very difficult job.
Yeah, we have now, by the sounds of it, reached the pit stop phase of the Blancpain race, which I believe is going on at the moment, based on the noises going on in the background. But you're right, Paul. I mean, finding an opportunity against a car that behaves differently is difficult enough here, but in identical cars, it just compounds the problems.
And both drivers seem to be keeping it quite neat, quite clean. They come maintaining a reasonable pace compared to the front runners. So this one's going to be a case of, I don't think drivers at this level, you can pressure into a mistake. You've just got to stay as close as you can and understand every aspect of where they are strong in comparison to you, and then ultimately go for a mix of bravery, skill and foolhardiness in order to effect an overtake, as we ride on board now with the Kessel Racing Andre Franke driven Ferrari.
Well, I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't have a wet race today. The dry settings do look very nice. So we were just looking at the onboard there and the sort of dynamic lighting across the dashboard. It's a very good looking view.
Yeah, but a bit of rain, like the real world, the virtual world is just the same. A little bit of the wet stuff always throws a variable into the mix. But just to interrupt myself a second, Nikolai Veznesky now really continuing his push back. He lost a lot of time at the beginning of the race, and now he's right on the back of this Ferrari 5 in his Lamborghini. So Veznesky, maybe he's got too much to do with not enough time in which to do it, but it's a little bit of a pride moment as he continues to push that Lamborghini as far up the field as he can get it, following his fracas that he got involved in at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, I think he may have been the fracas of one actually, Paul, but we haven't seen a replay of that. We've got, I think he's genuinely got more pace than the two Ferraris in front. The Ferrari just doesn't seem the car to have in the dry conditions. In the wet, it certainly performed better than this. Was certainly one of the safer cars, which over a race distance in those kind of conditions was, well, it's certainly the car I would have thought about taking.
Yeah, it is, and these two, of course, also are fighting tooth and nail, so they're holding themselves up, defending and racing against each other, so they're going slower than the ultimate pace. And Veznesky, if he can clear the two cars in front of Franke and Ibrahimi, he will then only have a short gap up to Maximilian Verde in the Mercedes in P7, so there's still quite a bit of ground that Nicodem can make up as we shoot back to these two that we've been saying are just about to overtake each other for the whole race and are still P1, P2 as per the starting grid. Pawlowski leading Franchek in the Lexus, who's now looking really aggressive over the chicane, really pushing hard to try and get the run into and out of, more importantly, the final corner.
There you go, he keeps it much tidier this lap, doesn't get that understeer he had before, now in the absolute best position to take advantage of the slipstream. That Audi does seem to get off of turn 17 much better than the Emil Frey Lexus. He looks to the inside, does brake a little bit later, but it's not going to be enough this time.
Yeah, so really good driving from Pawlowski, seeing that they've got the Lexus up his inside wing mirror. He just manages to spot his own braking point, stop where he needs to stop. As we go back to the Ferrari Challenge, it's now become a three-car fight coming into T1, three wide into the opening turn. On the inside is Veznesky. Has he been spotted by the Ferrari on his outside? He keeps it nice and tight. Three wide on the apex, not seen that one before, successfully achieved. And believe it or not, all three cars changed position and not one of them's crashed. So
a double overtake there for Wisniewski. Excellent car positioning, and it has to be said all three drivers should be credited for keeping that clean. A little bit of rubbing, but I think that's to be expected when three try to go into one.
Yeah, when three cars try and occupy a space of track that's exactly three cars wide, a little bit of touching's not bad. That was some good driving, and that ultimately means now that Veznesky has moved up 2 positions, and Franke and Ibrahimi continue their fight further down the order. So Veznesky currently P8 on pursuit of Maximilian Verde ahead.
Sorry, just an update on David Greco. Got past Verdi and was released. He's dropped it by 2.5 seconds now, and is reeling in Schoenfleet ahead at quite a pace now, down to just 1.9 seconds. He was faster on the last lap by a whole second. Last lap he's faster by a couple of tenths. He's made up another few tenths this lap, so that's a battle that's going to be joined very soon.
Yep, David Greco continuing the bit between his teeth, pushing his way through the field from a little bit of a disappointing qualification session, but showing armfuls of pace now in the race. So Greco 6, that'll be 5th on the adjusted timesheets when we discount Franchek's time, currently in P2. So Greco's still got a bit of work to do, but having a fantastic race as we cut back to a rinse and repeat of the last 10 laps. The Lexus looks at the inside. Does he go all the way? No, he's just showing his nose, trying to occupy the apex. The Audi cuts back across him, giving him no racing room, or enough racing room, but no overtaking room. And again, fabulous driving from both of these cars. But Chris, can they keep this up for the next 15 minutes, or has it got disaster written all over it?
I really hope so. I don't think it's got disaster written all over it. They've had 6 or 7 attempts for Camel to get past the other Camel, and Honestly, this is fantastic racing by both drivers. Kamil Pawlowski doing an excellent job of keeping what looks like a slightly faster car behind him.
Yeah, it is excellent driving. It's some of the finest display of on-the-edge sim racing I've seen for a while. And actually, while these two have been fighting, that's brought Hani Al-Sabti almost back into the mix in the unmissable yellow AMG Mercedes behind. So Al-Sabti dropped off a little bit earlier in the race, but now seems to be bringing himself back into play again. Is that a case of ultimate lap time not quite there, or is it a tactical thing? Has he been looking after his car for a push in the final 13 minutes?
Potentially a bit of both, Paul. I think the Mercedes is well known for being one of the cars that's sort of a bit better on fuel saving, so at this stage of the race maybe a better car to have. Maybe, as you say, just keeping his powder dry and waiting for the situation in front to evolve. The other aspect, of course, is Kamil Franček is his teammate at Thrustmaster, so perhaps he's waiting for either him to get past or just doesn't want to get involved. He's in the qualifying position already.
Yeah, no need to throw yourself into a risky position when it's not necessary for the ultimate prize, as Franček now really monstering the curve. Once again, a little bit of grass kicking up from the Pawlowski Audi driven before, which has compromised him more than we've seen so far at this stage. We've seen the Lexus can get a slipstream and almost pull alongside the Audi, and we know it's good on brakes naturally. But will Franček have the appetite to throw it up the inside and take hold of that apex for himself? No, he doesn't. Gets the rear end locked a little as he avoids contact.
And a carbon copy of the last 2 or 3 attempts, Paul.
Or last 12 attempts, some might say. Which,
yeah, who's counting?
Who's counting, indeed? Who's counting? We've got 12 minutes left on the clock now, folks. Track temperature has risen to 28 degrees, and circuit air temperature is 22 degrees. So I think this is going to stay dry to the end, and I'm sure this fight we're watching now is going to run and run until the end of this race in another 11 minutes, 52 seconds and change.
Yeah, just to update on the other developing fight with David Greco now 1.5 seconds behind Schumfli. He's getting there, but he's running out of time to do anything with that, Paul.
He is, so just a few tenths made up over the last lap for Greco. He needs to really up the pace a little bit further if he's got any aspiration of getting on the rear of that AMG Mercedes of Arne Schulvli in front.
Well, it's not just a case of getting on the rear, Paul. It took him 20 minutes to get past the previous Mercedes of Verdi, so...
To quote Murray Walker, catching is one thing, passing is quite another, as we look at this fight up front once again. All you folks watching from home, if you're enjoying this, or even if you're not, please do give us a like and a subscribe. We would enjoy that greatly. And 11 more minutes to go, and then we can start to breathe and relax again, Chris. It's been a little bit frantic, the pace, even considering the dry conditions.
Yeah, it's not been the craziness of the wet races yesterday, but the standard of racing and the battles that have been unfolding have been outstanding. I would rather watch two guys fighting for the lead like this lap after lap than just watch constant overtakes, as Pawlowski gets a lot of understeer mid-corner. That's going to compromise his run down to turn 1.
That's the second lap in a row that Pawlowski struggled in the final turn, so this could be the car moving, or the balance moving away from him slightly, which again is opening up an opportunity for Franček. Very confident driving from Pawlowski in front, knows that he's not got an opportunity to overtake there, maintains his line, doesn't do anything silly, holds position and leaves absolutely no room for the chasing Lexus to find a way past.
So yeah, here's something that's a little bit different from yesterday, Paul. We were having stewards' decisions being put across our desk, left, right and centre, and I haven't seen a single one.
No, really good. And that's
quite refreshing, actually.
Which is refreshing and testament to the quality of the driving that's been displayed by our racers so far, anyway, at least in the first 35 minutes of this event. This race would have been over if it was the semi-final yesterday, because they were only 30-minute races, and now we're doing 45 minutes. So this is a semi-uncharted territory for the drivers.
Yeah, nice to be on board with Kamil Pawlowski here, watching the car. He seems to be fighting it quite a lot. We've seen Kamil Kamil Franček. I can't just use the first names because this is the Kamil show now. Yeah, maybe the car has started to go away from him a bit. He looks less confident now than he has through the preceding 35 minutes.
Yep, and he's dropping sort of half a second or so lap time wise away from his ultimate fastest lap achieved in the race so far. So maybe the Audi is starting to come away in balance a little bit from Pawlowski in P1.
Yeah, we've just gone back to the fight for now P6. David Greco finally made it up to the back of Arne Schumfli. as we confidently predicted, or as I confidently predicted, and didn't commentators curse it for once?
Greco yet stuck to the back of that Mercedes a lot more faster than I thought he would do. At one time I was beginning to wonder if he had the pace to close the gap quick enough, but David Greco, a workmanlike performance here, really getting his head down and closing up to the back of Schumfli. He's got 8.5 minutes in which to make an overtake. 8.5 minutes, that's probably 4 laps or so. This is going to be, and he's not quite in an overtaking position yet, this is going to be high pressure for Greco to have one final opportunity to close up in the final running order of today's race.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it took a good 20 minutes to get past Verdi, so hopefully in the same car as well, so hopefully you can find something else in the bag.
Yeah, interesting that, as you say, Verdi behind both Verdi and Schumfli driving the AMG Mercedes, so Greco knows the back of that car intimately now following his fight with Verdi, and will have some kind of inkling as to where the car is strong or weak on the racetrack. So Greco got a little bit of an advantage over last time round. It'll be interesting to see if he can do anything about it in 7.5 minutes, just over. He's definitely got the lap time advantage. It's whether he can find a way past.
As we saw before, cruising up to the back of that Mercedes was fairly simple for Greco, but it was that last couple of tenths of a second that were the real challenge.
It was, as we, just a quick update on what's happening at the front of the field. It's still as you were, 1 second covering the top 3 drivers so far. So that's still the same tasty fight that it has been for the duration of the race. And will we be getting into desperation times now, or will people think it's wiser just to step back and have a little breather and think about it, ready to throw the dice in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, I'm going to risk a prediction and suggest that Franchek, the way the two of those have been driving, the two Camels, I don't think there's going to be any funny business. I think they'll be very respectful, and I don't expect that to change.
I agree. The quality of the two drivers is has been proven to be of the very highest standard. As we see Greco, as we see now, back on Robert Franchek again, doing his usual, showing the inside. This time he's given up on it. He's going to try and get a better run coming out of turn 1, which he does, but not quite enough of an advantage to put himself up the inside or the outside of the Audi in front. And Pawlowski is just a masterclass in keeping it neat. As we go back now to Schumfli, being overtaken by Greco. Greco gone for it in T1, the first opportunity available, snatched the bull by the horns and achieved a reasonably clean, a little bit of a kiss, but nothing untoward.
Yeah,
good pass.
He absolutely needed to do that right then, there and there, if he stands any chance of, well, he's got a 5-second gap to Fuoco, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, he couldn't afford to spend lap after lap behind that AMG Mercedes. And that little... we appear to have lost Kamil Franchek. Just cutting to the lead there with Hani Al-Sabti in second. Didn't see that on camera. Must be a mistake or a technical issue.
Yep, Franchek dropping back to P3 now, so not quite sure what happened there, but it's interesting. You alluded to this earlier, Chris. They're two Thrustmaster drivers racing together, so whether Franchek conceded the place for Al-Sabti, or whether there was a mistake had, or whether it's a passing gone wrong, we're not quite sure. I'm sure we'll be informed about what's happened at some stage, but last time I looked at the times, there was a 0.2 of a second gap between P1 and 2, so maybe...
Here's another crazy possibility, Paul. Are they playing the team game? Is he going to back Fuoco up into David Greco to try and get the final Thrustmaster driver into the top 3?
Now this is a very interesting point, sir.
Because that happened just after David Greco got
you and your
got
suspicious
past.
mind. You've got a good point, though. That is very interesting. We'll watch that one. We've not seen this level of strategy employed in the series so far, so I'll be curious to see how our officials take to that kind of behaviour should it happen. But we're a long way away from that happening yet. Greco currently in P5, chasing down Fuoco in front. He's got 4.8 seconds to find, so unless assistance is played, it's going to be a very big ask to do that one.
The other possibilities may have let Al-Sabti go and have a go at Pawlowski, feeling that he's tried to overtake that Audi a dozen times now and just doesn't have the drive off of turn 17 to be able to make it happen.
Either way, if things stay as they are, then Pawlowski, Al-Sabti and Fuoco all qualify anyway, because Franchek, although he's in the race and will be awarded the finishing position, won't take the qualification spot because he's already qualified at the opening round of the series back in Monza. So a curious scenario where I'm sure Frenchek just wants to stay out of trouble and not do anything controversial, have himself a good race, which he's done fantastically well.
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting that neither of us are willing to entertain the possibility that he just made a mistake, Paul.
I know, it doesn't seem possible from the machine-like performance that he's put in this weekend, but again, when you're on the absolute limit for 45 minutes of eSport racing, in the close proximity that it has been to the Audi in front, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that a little snatch wheel here or a late turn in there could have led to the dropping of 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, just on board with David Greco now, and that Lex is still looking pretty handy, pretty happy to take the curves aggressively at this stage of the race.
He just looks like a really well-sorted car, doesn't it, Chris? It's just nothing's too excitable happening behind the wheel. It's just doing broadly what David Greco wants it to do. That's like a fun place to be, that cockpit at the moment.
Yeah, it's certainly not a struggle. I think he might be regretting that little run across the gravel earlier, cost him a lot of time, and maybe wondering what could have happened if he'd have just cleared those Mercedes earlier, like it looked like he was going to for a long time.
I think credit where credit's due, though. We've seen Greco on track with us in this series a couple of times before, including this one, and this is by far and away the most convincing performance I've seen from David Greco. Really impressed with the drive, the maturity, the way he kept his head during a little bit of excitement earlier in the race. One of the standouts for me, David Greco, although sadly for him, it appears as though he's not going to be rewarded with a finishing position he would have liked.
Yeah, just looked up at the clock and we've only got 2 minutes left, Paul, so it'll be this lap and one more, depending on how quickly the leaders complete the lap. We might get another one in, actually, just looking at where they are right now. Hani Al-Sabti with 1.3 seconds to make up to the lead. He's been about that far away from the lead battle for most of the race, so it'll be interesting to see if he can do something with that. Frenchek hasn't dropped any further behind, so perhaps he did just make a little bit of an error there.
Yeah, so Al-Sabti is still displaying a remarkably high pace, considering the fact that they've done almost 45 minutes now on this set of tyres. Last time round was a 1:54.645, which is only 0.3 of a second or so away from his ultimate fastest time. So Al-Sabti's very much got the bit between the teeth still, got an interest in fighting for the race victory here today.
Interestingly, David Greco hasn't dropped Schoenfleet as much as I thought he would, just 0.9 of a second after passing him a couple of laps ago. And here we go to the recovering Nikodem Wisniewski, finally cruised up to the back of Verdi.
Yep, Nikodem Wisniewski in the Lamborghini, recovering from an incident potentially of his own making earlier in the race, has had a good, solid drive today, shown some good pace, kept his head down, kept pushing, even though he's really out of the contention for the big position. He's got a look on the back of the Burt, looks to the outside line. Verde covers the inside line, brings it back onto the racing line, but is compromised slightly on the exit of the chicane. Also runs a little bit wider than ideal onto the curbs. Not quite leaving enough of a Lamborghini-sized gap up the inside for the final turn, but again, compromise on corner exit.
We've seen that Lamborghini, just how well it pulls off at the final turn, and it being alongside at the start-finish line, is unusual.
It is, and Wisniewski now on the inside for T1, but not as confident on the brakes as the bright red Mercedes. Both cars have very closely together into the exit out of the exit of the corner. Now Verde is on the inside line for the left-hander, runs Wisniewski wide onto the rumble strips, which is just enough to unsettle the Lamborghini. Wisniewski has to have a little touch of the brakes and settle back in behind the back of the AMG Mercedes of Maximilian Verde. Good driving from both.
Yeah, fantastic racing from both guys, and once again, great car positioning from Maximilian Verde in defence.
Yeah, really knew what he was doing then and how to do it.
Well, he's had all race practicing it, Paul.
Well, that's true, actually. Yeah, defence is something that's going to be got a much higher scorecard on his top trumps when he finishes this season. And speaking of people that like to race in close company, the two Ferraris have been pretty much glued together and remain so heading into the final throws of our final race.
Yeah, we've got the clocks run down to 0, and when Pawlowski gets around to the end of the lap, it will be he will see the checkered flag. Hani Al-Sabti.
Oh, Al-Sabti at the side of the racetrack at the end of the race. Al-Sabti is into what looks like a retirement knock. And he's out of fuel, we've just been informed, so that is a nightmare scenario for Hani Al-Sabti, has retired from the race before we cross the finish line, as Kamil Pawlowski shows absolute utter class throughout the race, Chris, and crosses the finish line of the winner of the SRO Esports GT Series Round 4 from the Nürburgring. fantastic drive.
Yeah, Kamil Franček brings the car home in second. Be interested to find out what the incident was there. And we've cut away from the broadcast, so we can't tell you the rest of the positions, unfortunately.
But yeah, that was a very, very dramatic end to the race. Hani, I've just been informed, ran out of fuel literally in the final third of the final lap after what was a
bad
fabulous
timing,
drive.
and just that promotes David Greco to fourth. Not
Yep, David Greco finishing fourth.
importantly, with Franček being removed from the running, that gives David Greco the final qualifying place for Barcelona.
And that is a just reward for David. I think he's driven fantastically during that race, and it's been good to, we've mentioned earlier, an outstanding drive without the reward he would have hoped for. Well, you never know in motor racing. It's never over until it's over, and Greco just sneaks into the final qualification spot.
The timing screen's just updated there, changed the order of the bottom half of the field. Not sure what happened there. We saw Nikodem Wisniewski spinning the car. I'm not sure if that was just after the line or not. I'm not sure if he was just sort of celebrating in an exuberant fashion.
Exuberant acceleration, celebrating, sorry. And so he should, because again, Wisniewski drove really well.
It was a really fantastic recovery drive.
To be honest with you, again, and I've said this all weekend, we've both said this on and off camera.
You can see just on the picture, Hani Al-Sabti on the right-hand side of the picture talking to his teammate Josh, looking absolutely gutted at that after a fantastic drive.
Yep, shake of the head. It's heartbreaking for a driver to have a very big reward snatched away from him. Literally could not be any closer to the end of the session. So bad news for Hani. Fantastic racing throughout the field, as has been all weekend. Chris, it's been a pleasure sitting here next to you, mate. I really enjoyed it.
It has. It's been a great race to commentate on. We've had plenty of fantastic battles throughout the Kamil show. Pawlowski and Franček, lap after lap for 42 minutes, maybe, was it, Paul? I can't count how many overtaking attempts there were there, but Kamil Pawlowski, deserved winner after one of the best defensive drives I've seen in any form of motorsport ever, I think, Paul.
Really, really superb throughout the field, just quality, respectful, high-class racing. Really enjoyed myself. You guys at home, thank you as always for watching. Next time we see you live and exclusive on track, we'll be at Barcelona for the grand finale, so do tune into that one at the end of September.